In this video, you will learn how to make changes to your Hours of Supervised Practice form, otherwise known as the HSEP, and how to trigger a final evaluation. Changes fall into two categories: changes that do not require CAP approval and changes that do require CAP approval. Please refer to the timestamps in the written description below for where to find instructions based on your specific needs. It must be noted that all changes to your HSEP require verbal approval from your supervisors, particularly substantive changes such as a new client population where additional training or education may be required. While most changes are easy to make on this form, provisionals are discouraged from making substantive changes to the details in the text boxes. Because the information in the text boxes have already been approved by the RASC, substantive changes could create problems at the evaluation stage. Let's get started with making changes to your HSEP. Of course, you will need to open the form from your MyCap portal. We will start with the changes that do not require CAP approval. As noted in the instructions section at the top of your HSEP, the changes that do not require CAP approval include dates, descriptions, client populations, reallocation of hours, practice locations, and secondary supervisors. In this segment of the video, we will cover how to add a new practice location, a secondary supervisor, and how to reallocate hours between professional activities. The first step with any change that you are making is to record the change you are making in either the complete the box below only or the record all changes made to your supervision plans here box in the supervision plans section. The name of this box will be different depending on which version of the HSEP you are using, but will be located in the same place on the form. Here, you will describe the changes you are making and add a date. This information keeps a running log of changes made to your supervision plans. For example, you might say, June 2024, adding the main thing, Psychological Services, Inc., as a new practice location, adding Kevin Wallace as a secondary supervisor, increasing the number of interventions hours, and decreasing consultation hours. Let's start with adding a practice location. Scroll down to the practice location section and click the Add button. The new location will be at the bottom of this section. You may now select the new location and the professional activities and branches of psychology that are appropriate. Note that adding a new branch that has not previously been approved by CAP is a change that must be approved by the RASC before you can start counting hours in it. If the business name is not in our database, you will have to enter the full details in this area. Please also make sure to add your new practice location to the My Profile section of your MyCap portal. Now, let's add a secondary supervisor. The first step is to scroll down to your supervision section, click the Add button, and scroll past your existing supervisors. You may now select the new supervisor from the list. If their name does not appear, they are not eligible to supervise at this time. Not everyone on the CAP register is eligible to be a supervisor. The standards for supervision, which are located on the CAP website, outline the criteria for supervisors. They include being a registered psychologist in Alberta for a minimum of 5 consecutive years and being a member in good standing. If a CAP member does not meet the criteria, their name will not appear as an option in this section. Mark your new supervisor as secondary. Make the required declarations. And add the appropriate forms of monitoring and supervision. Make note of this automatically generated number because you will need it for the next step. You now need to assign this new supervisor to your existing professional activities. Scroll down to the professional activities section and find the specific professional activities you want to assign the supervisor to. In this case, consultation. Now add them by inputting the automatically generated number that we just spoke about in the secondary supervisor box. Another change you can make without CAP's approval is changing the hours allocations between professional activities. This is all done within the same professional activities section. As we look at a professional activity, you will note that some of these fields are available, while others are grayed out, including the anticipated hours of practice and the anticipated hours of supervision. This is rectified by clicking the yes on do you need to make changes to your plan in any of the professional activities. You may now change the hours allocations as required. Note that the professional activities and primary supervisor are grayed out. That is because they cannot be changed. These particular changes require CAP approval, and we will cover how to do this in a moment. Please refer to the timestamps in the written description below for where to find instructions based on your specific needs. You will now scroll to the bottom of the form and click Save for Later. Do not click Submit at this time because that will send the form to CAP and we won't know why you are sending it to us. We have now covered how to make changes to your HSEP that do not require CAP approval, and we now turn to changes that do require CAP approval. As noted in the instructions, this includes a new primary supervisor, branch, or professional activity. Again, the first step with any change that you make is to record the changes you are making in either the Complete the Box Below only or the Record All Changes Made to Your Supervision Plans Here box in the Supervision Plan section. Here, you will describe the changes you are making and add the date. This information keeps a running log of changes you have made to your supervision plans and helps CAP to know what changes you are requesting that require RASC approval. For example, you might say, August 2024, changing primary supervisor to Dr. Heather Gower and adding educational school as a branch. Let's start with how to add a new primary supervisor. This might be when you start with someone new or when you are switching the roles of your existing primary and secondary supervisors. Changing primary supervision requires several steps, including adding the supervisor, adding new professional activities, obtaining RASC approval, and then closing off or finishing supervision with your existing primary supervisor with a final evaluation. You may also need to add a new location. This step is covered in the first segment of this video. Please refer to the timestamps in the written description below. Again, not everybody on CAP Register is eligible to be a supervisor. Please see the standards for supervision located on the CAP website to review the criteria for supervisors. If a CAP member does not meet the criteria, their name will not appear as an option in this section. Also noted in the standards for supervision, provisionals must be supervised at all times, whether they are practicing or not. The only exception is for parental leave. Because a change in primary supervisor signifies the termination of the supervisory relationship and the start of a new one, it is important to have your new supervisor and supervision plan approved before terminating the relationship with your existing supervisor and before having a final evaluation completed. Therefore, where possible, be sure you obtain approval from the RASC on your new supervision plan before starting your new position. Note that you cannot count any hours with a new supervisor or supervision plan until approved by the RASC. Now, let's add a new primary supervisor. You will scroll down to the supervision section and click Add. You will skip this step if your current secondary supervisor will be your new primary supervisor. It's okay if they are already listed as a secondary in this section. To select from the list of supervisors, start typing their last name. In this example, we will use Dr. Heather Gower as the new primary supervisor. Note that the system automatically assigns a number to this supervisor. Make note of this automatically generated number because you will need it for the next step. Mark this new supervisor as a primary and make the required declarations regarding this supervisor. In the Forms of Monitoring and Evaluation section, we will select all that apply. You now need to create new professional activities and assign this new supervisor to them. Scroll down to the Professional Activities section, find the first one, and click Yes on Do you need to make changes to your plan? This will activate the Add button at the top of this Professional Activities section. Click Add, and then scroll down to the bottom of this section below your existing activities, and you will find a new supervision plan to fill out. Complete all the fields as indicated, being careful to input the correct information. Please use the Help buttons and the definition document on CAP's website for clarity and to ensure you are providing adequate details. We now select our first professional activity from the drop-down list, Interventions. I am selecting Clinical Counseling as the branch, which matches the practice location section earlier on the form. Enter the practice and supervision hours you intend to obtain. In our example, Interventions will have 1,000 practice hours. As noted in the help text for supervision hours, supervision is required at a ratio of 1 hour of supervision for every 15 hours of practice. You will need to calculate how many supervision hours are required for 1,000 hours of practice. 1,000 hours divided by 15 is 66.6, or 67 supervision hours. Always round the hours up, not down. Now, you need to select the client populations you will be working with in this professional activity. Now, complete the 2 text boxes accordingly. A common problem area is not being specific enough in the treatment details text box. It is not enough to simply list the modalities you wish to use. You must also elaborate on the specific therapy approaches for each client population you've selected. For example, with children, I will use play therapy and solution-focused therapy. For adults, I will use cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. If you will be working with infants or preschoolers, which fall under the child-adolescent category, please add these details in the Presenting Issues box. You will now identify your supervisors related to this specific professional activity. As noted above in the supervision section, Heather Gower, our new primary supervisor, is identified as number 4. As described in the help text, you do not use the supervisor's name or registration number in this field, but rather the automatically assigned number from the supervision section. Next, you will enter your start and anticipated end dates, along with the midterm evaluation date. The start date is the date of the RAS meeting at which your changes would be reviewed. The end date is based on how long it will take to complete the hours and is not the same as the end of your 5-year provisional registration. The midterm evaluation date should be at the midpoint of these hours. After the completion of the midterm evaluation, the evaluation itself is maintained in your and your supervisor's provisional files. CAP does not require a copy of the midterm evaluation unless there are issues highlighted. Because CAP standards for supervision indicate that a final evaluation must be submitted within 1 month of completion or termination of hours, the final evaluation due date is automatically calculated to be 1 month after the end date of the professional activity. An optional field is interruptions. As per the help text, you can inform CAP of any extended vacations, closures, or expected leaves of absence during the course of completing your hours. Once we have finished entering the details for the professional activity of interventions, we can now add the next activity by scrolling to the top of this section and clicking Add. This new professional activity is now below the existing ones. If you scroll to the bottom of the HSEP, you will see a quick summary of the overall hours on this form. In our example, there are more than 1,600 practice hours and 107 supervision hours. Don't worry about this right now. Your hours will balance out after the new changes are approved and a final evaluation from your current primary supervisor is completed. If at any point you need to leave this form incomplete and want to save it, scroll to the bottom of the page and click Save for later. Note that this simply saves the form and does not submit it to CAP. You will continue adding professional activities until your new supervision plan under your new supervisor is complete. When you are sure that all elements of this form are correct, click Submit to send the form to CAP in preparation for the RASC meeting at which it will be reviewed. Once you click Submit, you will no longer have access to make changes to the form. After your new supervisor and supervision plans have been approved and the HSEP is returned to you, you will then trigger the final evaluation for your previous supervision plans. This process will be covered later in this video. Remember to pay attention to the RASC meeting dates and deadlines posted on the CAP website to ensure your changes are reviewed in a timely manner. Let's turn now to adding a new branch. You will want to ensure that every declared branch has a minimum of 400 hours and that the supervisors are competent in the branches you have assigned them to. There are several steps to adding a branch, and all of them have been covered in other parts of this video. Please refer to the timestamps in the written description below for these steps. First, you will start at the practice location section and assign a new branch to your existing locations, or add a new practice location and assign the new branch to it. If you have a new primary supervisor for this branch, you will add them to the supervision section. You will then add new professional activities with the new branch. Do not add new branches to existing professional activities because adding branches requires CAP approval. If at any point you need to leave this form incomplete and want to save it, scroll to the bottom of the page and click Save for later. Note that this simply saves the form and does not submit it to CAP. You will continue adding professional activities until your new supervision plan is complete. When you are sure that all elements of this form are correct, click Submit to send the form to CAP in preparation for the RASC meeting at which it will be reviewed. Once you click Submit, you will no longer have access to make changes to the form. Let's turn now to how to delete items from your HSEP. A common question is how to delete a secondary supervisor. In fact, a supervisor can never be removed from the HSEP. The name will remain part of the permanent record of completing your hours. However, you can remove a secondary supervisor from the specific professional activity that they are assigned to. Navigate to the professional activity and delete the supervisor's number from the corresponding secondary supervision field. Remember to record this change in the Complete the Box Below only, or record all changes made to your supervision plans here box in the Supervision Plans section. Another common question is how to delete a professional activity that you will not be practicing in. There is no actual delete button because the HSEP is a permanent record of what happened in your professional journey. Any professional activity you add will always be saved in the HSEP, even if you did no hours in it. Deleting a professional activity simply means you have done no hours. Because the HSEP has continued to evolve, new upgrades may not apply to old versions of the form. That is, a technical upgrade to how the form works today may not work on an HSEP that was created several months ago. Therefore, there is no one way to delete a professional activity. Depending on how current your HSEP is and what professional activity you are trying to delete, there are three possible ways to do this. 1. Simply put 0 hours in the practice and supervision fields. You can save the form after these changes, but you will only know if it works when you try to submit this form either for future changes to the HSEP or when you are trying to trigger a final evaluation. If you receive an error, you will try the second option, which is put 1 hour in the practice and supervision fields. This is CAP's workaround when 0 hours cannot be used, and we know that a 1 in these fields means that no hours were completed. The third option for deleting is if you are trying to delete formal assessment or have completed fewer than the required 400 hours in formal assessment. In this case, you will put 9999 hours in both the practice and supervision fields. In the text boxes, you will put something like 0 hours completed above the current text. Or if some hours were completed and you want it recorded that you did so, you would type competence not obtained. 250 hours were completed above the current text. This is helpful information to retain in case you choose to pursue formal assessment in the future. Please adjust this text to suit your specific circumstance. This will, of course, skew the total hours at the bottom of the HSEP. Don't worry about this. The HSEP details show the full story. We now turn to the final segment in this video, how to trigger a final evaluation. A final evaluation is required when you terminate supervision with a primary supervisor or when the 1,600 hours are completed. Because provisionals must be supervised at all times, be careful to plan the transition from your current primary supervisor to the new primary supervisor around a RASC meeting. That is, you want to first obtain RASC approval on your new supervisor before terminating supervision with the current supervisor. After approval is obtained, you can then trigger the final evaluation for hours completed. Even if 0 hours were completed, a final evaluation must be done. It is important to trigger the final evaluation correctly the first time, because incorrectly generated evaluations may cause you problems in the future. Be sure that all professional activities to be evaluated have an end date of today or earlier. You cannot put a future end date and expect an evaluation to be generated. After you have changed the end dates, click the Submit button at the bottom of the form. This will generate the online evaluation and send an email to the primary supervisor with a link to complete it. The primary supervisor is expected to consult with all secondary supervisors related to the supervision plan and include their hours and comments on the evaluation. A word of caution: never click Submit with wrong end dates. If you are still working on the hours, be sure to change the end dates to the future so that a final evaluation will not accidentally be created. Again, triggering a final evaluation when you don't mean to causes you problems in the future. Please be diligent regarding this. This brings us to the end of this video. One final note to make is that there is no easy way to print the HSEP. If you want a paper copy for your files, or if your supervisor wants to review it, press Ctrl-P on your keyboard to bring up your computer's print dialog box. You can choose to print the entire document or specific pages. I hope this has been helpful to orient you on making changes to your HSEP. Again, please consult with your supervisors to ensure that what you have entered on this form accurately reflects your practice hours. Please visit our website for more information on the registration process.